All right, everybody, this is our first set of notes on our colonization and exploration. This goes with our first unit with colonial America. Colonization and exploration are two concepts that play a pivotal role through the early part of American history because we're going to be exploring a whole lot of new territory and colonizing new parts of the world that we hadn't colonized before. To begin with, is there a difference between colonization and exploration? First off, exploration means travel for the purpose of discovery, and colonization means a group of people leaving their native country to settle in a new land. Now, exploration is you traveling outside of your country, trying to find something brand new that you hadn't seen, like the first explorers going to India or China and finding tea or silk or spices and bringing those back to Europe, or coming to America and discovering this whole new land with lots of raw materials that we hadn't seen before. Uh, when they see these things and they explore and find these new things, well, then people want to find out more information about them. And so then they turn around and they colonize these areas. And so you leave your native country to settle in a new land, and you're still connected to the mother country or your country of origin. So basically, people that left England were still technically English. People that left Spain were still technically Spanish. You just viewed yourself a little bit different because you're no longer inside that territory 24/7. The mother country or your country of origin would use your colony for resources and raw materials just as a way to continually grow and to make money, because a lot of these colonies are set up for financial reasons, and so they want to make sure that at all times they had access to those resources. Next, sorry about that, we have our reasons for exploration. Initially, people wanted to find a faster route to Asia or China and India. There's this mythical passage called the Northwest Passage, and it's a waterway that connected the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. Basically, it was this whole river system that connected those two oceans, and so if you could find it, instead of going south to Africa and then coming all the way around the other side of Africa from Europe, you would be able to bypass it, and people thought the world was a lot smaller than it really is. Another reason for people to explore were the three G's, as we talked about in Texas history quite often. And our three G's are God, gold, and glory. This is Spain's primary reason for colonization. And their idea was to spread Christianity, to be able to find people that had never heard of Christianity and to convert them into their way of believing, to find wealth or money, and to gain prestige for themselves and their nation, so they could go through there and find ways to make themselves feel better about themselves. And the more land that you had, the better your country tended to be. Competition between these countries fueled exploration. Uh, Basically, everybody was trying to get new lands that nobody had been to yet, and the more land they could get kind of made them feel better about it. And a lot of these European powers, the kings and queens, were kind of cousins, and so it would turn out as a way for family warfare too. And it led to colonization. The more and more they were able to gain these areas, they were able to colonize more, and it gained more raw materials. Reasons for colonizations: nations were able to choose. Nations chose to colonize a territory mostly for economic reasons. They wanted the colonies colonial resources for economic gain, to make money off of them. Mercantilism is an economic system that we have to be familiar with from the beginning of the school year through the end of the school year, and it means an economic system that colonies would send raw materials to the mother country or to your country of origin, who would convert them to products which would need and sell, people would need and sell these products back to the other colonies. So basically, you would come to North America, you would get trees. The trees would be shipped back to England. They would be converted into chairs, tables, furniture that you needed, housing material that you needed, and then they would send them back to you. So they would sell them at a higher price than they bought them, so that way they continually kept money flowing through their colonies. Groups of people colonized to escape religious persecution. When we talk about Plymouth, that's the reason that they came, was to escape religious persecution. They wanted to find wealth and move up a social ladder as indentured servants. Indentured servants are people that voluntarily become slaves and then turn around and work their way off, work their debt off, and then set up a new life in this new country. It was an easy way for them to get there. That social mobility was a huge thing because in England or Spain or France, you were pretty much stuck. Whatever you were born as, that's how you were going to die as well. And then I believe this is finally, almost finally, the four groups that came, and we're going to look more at these later. But the four groups that we're going to, four of the five groups are here. We're going to finish up with the English. The Dutch, New Amsterdam, New York, they came for economic reasons. They wanted to create trading posts along the Hudson River, Manhattan Island especially. And so they wanted to try to find ways to make money. And so they found trade with the Native Americans, and it worked out pretty well. The Swedish came to present-day Delaware for the same thing. They were able to find iron ore, timber, and furs to be able to sell back to in Europe. French Louisiana Territory, or the Great Lakes, was for, again, economic reasons, and it was searching for beaver pelts and other furs to be able to go through there and to grow this whole industry of finding animals and using those for clothes. At this time in Europe, they already hunted out most of the animals that they could utilize, and so it became very important to find other animals so they could continue to make their furs, because it was kind of an ice age type feeling, and people were really struggling to stay warm. But the French did not want to settle any or establish any permanent colonies. They probably worked the best with the Native Americans because they never tried to take their land. They tried to work with them side by side, and it really had a really good relationship. And finally, there was a Spanish who came to southwestern U.S., so think about Texas, Florida, and then everything through California. And they set up missions. One of their main goals was God. They wanted to try to set up these missions to convert Native Americans into Catholicism. Now, the final group that came were the English, and they settled along the East Coast. And they came for, one, economic reasons. Jamestown in 1607. Every time I say Jamestown, I need you to think 1607. They came there, and tobacco became a cash crop, a crop that made them bukus of cash. It was the only reason they were able to survive. And then they came for religious reasons. Plymouth, again, 1620 is the date that you have to think of every time we say Plymouth, came to Massachusetts. They were a group of separatists or Puritans or pilgrims. And this group was able to set up their own religious colonies. Eventually, we had the Quakers come to the present-day Pennsylvania, and finally the Catholic people that are Roman Catholic come over to Maryland. So we had these different reasons for these groups, and we're going to look more in depth into these groups later.